Hello, everybody. Mikey is here. So that must mean Premier League predictions. And I've got to say, a bit of an anticlimax, Mikey. We did the whole 2 rounds in one go last week for the midweek Amazon festivities. And as you said to me before we came on, like buses, we haven't had a draw all season. We drew both rounds. So round 14, which would have been the midweek, that was 6-all. 1 bob on, which was me with Arsenal 2, Man United 0. So you got 6 outcomes, which is very good. Round 15, 3-3. Very low on the scores, Mikey. But you did suggest on the last video, if we performed well on that, that doesn't really say a lot for our research, bearing in mind we didn't have the previous load of games played then. So it remains 8-5. We now have 2 draws into the mix, if you're wondering why the total doesn't quite add up to the total number of rounds. And you're closing in on the 100, mate, 97-90. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Ben. Yeah, it was a relief to me to see that we didn't do as well in the second match round, but they are always a little bit random and confusing, aren't they? When there's these double match rounds in the Premier League, there aren't a huge amount of them, but when they do come along, there's always a few surprise results. And also, the reason it was a low score draw, Ben, is because there was less games. There was only 9 matches in match round 15. Otherwise, we would have definitely been able to add 3 points each on
Liverpool and Everton. Yes, indeed. And actually, Everton are going to be up first. But before we get to that, normal deal here. Let me just remind you of the scores. Give yourself 1 point if you get a correct outcome, home, away, or draw. 3 points for a correct result. Give yourself a bonus point. Both Mikey and myself were tantalizingly close to Southampton versus Chelsea. I had 4-1 and Chelsea made it 5-1 in minute 87. Very close to bonus point. Mikey had 4-2. So had the correct number of goals, but not quite the right denomination. Get your own predictions down in the comments. We'll put the fixtures in the description. I've already mentioned Everton. They got the weekend off. Sam Parkin tells me if you're at home, postponements aren't necessarily a bad thing because no travel and a rest, but they are on the road, Mikey, Arsenal.
Yes, Ben, and this is a match between a big physical side who will try and nick a goal from a set piece against Sean Dyche's Everton, isn't it? There you go.
Knew it
had to do that.
Before it was delivered. I loved it.
An open goal, that one. But yeah, Arsenal simply must win this game and games like this between now and the end of the season. They drop more points at Fulham. They're still in this title race, but like I say, they've got to win games, especially games like Everton at home. Everton have only won 1 of their last 28 visits to Arsenal in the Premier League, and I think that was potentially in a behind closed doors game as well. Yeah, Everton are going to sit deep and try and frustrate Arsenal, aren't they? And maybe nick a goal from a set piece, maybe do an Arsenal on Arsenal. But I would expect them to have a plan for these set pieces. We might see something a little bit different to what we've seen in the other games. I'm sure Sean Dyche will have probably enjoyed the extra time on the training ground working towards this Arsenal game. So I don't think the Gunners are going to be able to rely on set pieces in this one. But I think that they'll still have more than enough to win this game from open play. So I've gone for Arsenal 3, Everton 1.
We could have a long debate about the blocking as well. I wonder when the VAR will start getting involved in the blocking. And we'll get a set play disallowed for a block because they do turn a lot of blind eyes to what are just clear fouls sometimes because they're just a done thing. So I'll go a bit more predictable than you, Mikey. You've gone for 4 goals. I'll go for Everton to try and keep it quiet, not have much attacking thrust, and Arsenal to just nick it. I was successful with a bob on with an Arsenal 2-0 home win on the last video, and I hope I'm going to be successful with another one, Arsenal 2, Everton 0. It's Liverpool versus Fulham, and I mentioned Sam's point about you wanted to be the home team on a postponement, but frankly, if the game's in the city where you're from anyway, it doesn't really matter. So Liverpool got themselves a bit of a rest as well, didn't they? Fulham... You're always closer with Fulham than me. I think we underrate them a little bit.
Yeah,
you can speak to that, perhaps. So, unfortunately, rating someone against Liverpool this season is giving them goals. Although, actually, you did get Newcastle to draw with Liverpool, which was a really good shout. But I'll go both teams to score on a home win. Liverpool 2, Fulham 1.
Okay, yeah, that's the first scribble for me. I'm probably going to have to change it. I'm going to match the Arsenal score here. I'm going to go for Liverpool to win this one 3-1 because I can definitely see Fulham scoring. Liverpool in absolute crisis here, Ben. They only took 1 point from that double match week, didn't they? But the call-off was good for them. And like you say, it's not like they had to travel anywhere. Alisson is back now. Diogo Jota's back. They have got a few injuries in that team, but they're going to be all right against Fulham. But Fulham, yeah, got to give them their flowers. 2 excellent results at home against Brighton and Arsenal. 4 points out of those two's impressive stuff. Fulham are here to stay in the top 10 this season.
Yeah, very much so. Newcastle versus Leicester, which makes me think of Emil Heskey absolutely ripping Newcastle to shreds when he was about 19, but he looked like he was about 30, the size of the bloke. What a player he was as a youngster. Anyway, Newcastle, Leicester.
Incredible, yeah. Leicester with the Walkers sponsorship and the big white collar. Yeah, a good era of football. That Matt Elliott and was it Jerry? Was it Jerry Taggart or is he the?
Yeah, Muzzy, is it? Steve
I wondered
Guppy.
whether I'd got Taggart confused with the Scottish detective then. But glad that I got that right. But Alan Shearer says that this Newcastle project is at a bit of a crossroads, but he also thinks that Eddie Howe is the right man to get them through this difficult period. It's strange, Ben, because last season we used to talk about how Newcastle didn't score a huge amount of goals, but was so solid defensively. Maybe it was the season before. It feels like Newcastle have been a solid defensive team, but they're very much not so at the moment. Conceded 7 in their last 2 matches. You just don't know what you're going to get, and they're in danger of just stagnating in mid-table this year. Although I think Newcastle fans have probably got their eyes on the cup competitions. They just desperately want to win some silverware, don't they? Mm-hmm. We've got to tip our cap to Leicester, Ben. 4 points from those 2 games. I didn't see that coming, even with the new manager coming in. New lease of life there. And what they do have, Ben, is that Premier League nous in the team. Players like Jamie Vardy, obviously, Bobby, Decordova-Reid, Jordan Ayew, Connor Cody, just so much Premier League experience there, and they can just drag them over the line in these matches and pick up results in games where they haven't necessarily played particularly well. I'm backing them to make this game tight and difficult for Newcastle. And although I've just talked about how bad Newcastle have been defensively, I'm going to go for a 1-0 Newcastle win here, which would really put a smile on Eddie Howe's face.
Yeah, it's difficult. I've got to give Ruud van Nistelrooy, like you say, the credit, but it does feel a bit outliery, fine margins going Leicester's way in those. They're brilliant, though, because like you say, it's the Premier League now that allows them to exploit those. I don't see it happening in an away game up at Newcastle, I've got to say. If it does, Ruud van Nistelrooy is a proper manager. I'm going to start rating him then. So I'll go Newcastle. You've taken the 1-0, which I quite like. I'll take the 2-0, which means, Mikey, we are 6 out of 6 for home wins, which brings us on very nicely to Wolves versus Ipswich. Utter disaster for Ipswich in the 3-game week. Just couldn't have really gone any worse in terms of, the way the defeats came as well, and late drama to lose at home to Bournemouth. So Wolves, I don't know what you were thinking on Monday night as they were playing West Ham. I'm kind of thinking, I almost hope they hang in there and draw. So Gary O'Neill's still there, because you wondered if they'd have fired Gary O'Neill, whether Wolves then turn up and win 3-0 and, get a reaction from him not being there. Nothing against Gary O'Neill, but that sometimes happens, doesn't it? Look, I'm so down in the dumps about Ipswich that I'm going to predict an Ipswich win just to cheer myself up. There's no logic to it whatsoever. It could happen.
And if it does happen, Ben, you have to predict Ipswich to win every single week here on in.
I'm not going to do that, Mikey, but I will predict it. Isn't it like Chelsea and Arsenal and Newcastle coming up after that? So, yeah, that's going to be a very short-lived pattern. But look, one thing we do know is if Ipswich do go to Wolves and win, then Gary O'Neill likely won't even make it through to Saturday night, poor fella. Beleaguered, I think, is the football cliche. Let's go Wolves 1, Ipswich 2, because Wolves are very leaky.
Okay, I'm going to go for the draw here, a draw that doesn't really help either side, does it? But yeah, Wolves by far the leakiest defence in the league, concede loads of goals from set pieces, but Ipswich haven't even scored a header yet this season. They did have one ruled out I mean, it wasn't really a header, but they had a goal from a set piece ruled out against Bournemouth on Sunday. Maybe that's an area that Ipswich can exploit and nick a goal. But yeah, it's going to be another difficult game at the defensive end because Wolves, while they're a little bit flaky, do have a lot of firepower. But yeah, unfortunately, even with my optimism, maybe I'm trying to just do something a little bit different here. I'm just going for Wolves 1, Ipswich 1.
Forest versus Villa, Mikey, is 5th versus 6th. Love it.
Yeah, and we've spoken about Emil Heskey and that famous blue Walker's shirt, and yeah, with this fixture, you can't help but mention Martin O'Neill, can you? These are two, and a proper old football club meet up. This one, isn't it? 3 points for Nottingham Forest from their double header in Manchester is a decent return from those two games, and they were superb at Old Trafford. So good on the counter attack, and they've got big, powerful defenders who can just cause problems in both boxes. Villa, they took 2 points as we both, I think we both predicted them to win both of those games against Brentford and Southampton. They didn't do it with a huge amount of style against Southampton. In fact, they were quite wasteful. But then since then, they've gone to Leipzig and won 3-2, and Duran scored again in that game. So I'm expecting a decent game in this one and a 2-2 draw. I don't think either side would be too disappointed with that.
Yeah, I'll take the draw as well. I think I might have pushed a bit more for a Forest win if they hadn't gone off to RB Leipzig last night. I think that makes it tricky. And we often look at teams like Forest who are having a really good season and point out that they're just going week to week and they don't have the extra travel and the extra mileage on the players and extra minutes in their legs. I was thinking about going for a 0-0. I just think that the managers are so clever, these two, Nuno and Emery, that they might cancel each other out. But there's too much talent, isn't there, for it to be 0-0. You've taken the Desmond, so I'll take the 1-1. And we'll both agree that we cannot separate Forest and Villa this week. Oh, my God, Mikey. Now, we have arguments and get told off in the comments about calling anything a derby. I'll leave that there as I set up Brighton versus Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace have done exactly what we said they were going to do and move into some nice form, hard to beat. I don't know what the number is. I'll look it up when you're talking like 1 defeat in 6, 7, 8 or something like that. So they're in good form. Brighton are tremendous, but I keep saying on here, Brighton have an odd result in them. And they've had a bad week, haven't they? Drawn at home to Southampton, should have beaten Leicester, shouldn't they? I mean, fair play to Leicester, but when you're 2 up that close, you win the game. Lost to Fulham as well. So I think Palace can get something in this game. I'll play the Desmond here then, Mikey, being you had it on the last one. Brighton 2, Palace 2.
Yeah, I'm going to go for 4 goals in this game as well, but I'm going to go for Brighton to win this one 3-1. Like you say, a bad week for them, but they were in position to win both of their games in the double match week, but maybe taking slightly too many risks when they're in a good position. Palace, solid win against Ipswich and an impressive draw against Manchester City. I thought they were good value for that point. But winless in 6 league games against Brighton. This one means a lot to the fans, but I think it'll be the Brighton fans that go home happy.
Manchester City versus Manchester United. And as we're recording right now, tonight, Man City go to Juventus as well. And Man United in action, Mikey, as well this midweek?
Possibly on Thursday.
Yeah, you talk and I'll look it up. Victoria Plzeň, which I do not know where that is. Do you know, Mikey? Czech Republic, is it? Czech Republic. There we go.
It sounds like Pilsner, doesn't it? So it makes sense for it to be Czech Republic, or Czechia as it's now known. This was an easier game to predict last season when Man City were smashing everyone and Manchester United weren't so well. I suppose that they're not great at the moment, are they? But you just feel like they're going to make it tough for Manchester City in this game. City's slump has ended, and Haaland's, he's scored again. Rico Lewis is going to be suspended for this.
What about De Bruyne though, Mikey? He's back.
Yeah, De Bruyne is back and he's purring, but yeah, it's quite an old midfield there. I think Jack Grealish played in a more central position against Nottingham Forest, but then was left on the bench at Palace. I'd like to see him get a game in a slightly more central position, maybe in the Bernardo Silva role in this game. But yeah, neither team by any means purring at the moment. United still a work in progress, but they keep making individual errors, and I think that will potentially continue in this one. I'm going to be a bit boring here and just go for Man City to win this one 2-1.
So we had a lot of fun calling 4-1 Man City victories, didn't we, at the start of the season? Because it was just an easy way to try and get a bonus point. But if, Man City are at home, they'd probably still win anyway. So I'm going to do that. I'm just looking at Man United's games under Amorim. Ipswich scored past them, then 3-2. Okay, 4-0 against Everton, but leaked 2 against Arsenal and 3 against Forest. So I think there's goals in this for Manchester City. And I'm not saying it's a return to past glories for Man City and they're going to be back where they were. Not be that type of 4-1, but I will go for a 4-1 nonetheless, an attempt to shoehorn in a bonus point for myself. Chelsea versus Brentford. How far are Chelsea off the top? 4 points off the top. Okay, Liverpool have got a game in hand, but Liverpool's start's been a complete freak show of wins, hasn't it? So Brentford, we generally think are better at home than away, and there's loads of goals in their games. Chelsea are good everywhere, and there's loads of goals in their games. So I'm going to play for a bonus point, obviously. What do you reckon? 5-2? 3-2? 4-2, 5-2, 3-2, 5-2. Chelsea 5, Brentford 2. Why the hell not?
I feel bad. I feel bad now because I'm going for Chelsea.
You got 1-0.
I've gone Chelsea 4, Brentford 1. I'm also going for a bonus point. This is a West London derby. It's probably a bigger one for Brentford. I'd call this one with my local
they've
knowledge.
Won there maybe a couple of times in the Premier League since they've been up.
Yeah, I think they have a decent record there. With my local knowledge, Ben, I'd call this one the Battle of Staines. There's a lot of Brentford and Chelsea fans in the Staines area these days. Chelsea showed at Spurs they've got character as well as quality, and I find myself rooting for them, Ben. It's weird.
They're great, aren't they?
I don't particularly like Chelsea. I don't particularly like many of their players, but I find myself rooting for them at the moment. Maybe it's because I want it to be an interesting title race. But
and how can you not love any team with Cole Palmer in either?
Yeah, I do love Cole Palmer, and I just like you, I can just see them scoring loads of goals in this game. And that isn't because we don't rate Brentford. We really do. But it's almost a credit to Brentford. They're going to go there and try and win the game. And that might make it a little bit easier for Chelsea to score.
Southampton versus Spurs. Gareth Bale derby.
Yeah. Gareth Bale derby. Very nice. This is the second of 2 games that are at 7:00 on Sunday evening.
Why is that?
I should know, shouldn't I? But I actually have no idea.
Put your TV hat on and tell me.
I'll look it up after, Ben, and tell you privately. Okay. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, this is another big game, isn't it? And you worry for Ange Postecoglou if he doesn't take 3 points from this one. That's not going to be a nice trip over to the away fans at the end of the game if he doesn't get a win in this one. Southampton, all of the issues that they have, and it's so difficult for them to win Premier League games, as it is for the team that we support. And just like the team that we support, you could do without having goalkeeper issues, couldn't you? And Joe Lumley, bless him, I don't think he doesn't have a huge amount of Premier League experience, and probably not a huge amount.
Doesn't have a huge amount of credit in the bank from QPR and Reading fans either, Mikey.
Yeah, and he finds himself playing in this Southampton team where the goalkeeper is expected to play a lot of football. It's difficult for him. They did all right at Villa. They kept it down to 1-0. Lumley did make a couple of good saves, to his credit, later on in that game. But it's worrying that they, even in the tight games, they're just not creating great chances. But I think Tottenham have got too much firepower. I'm going for another crazy game in this one. Two teams that will just go at it. I'm going Southampton 2, Tottenham 4.
I've been consistently terrible at predicting Tottenham, but I'd like to say that's because Tottenham is just on a bit of a sticky run and they're doing strange things. Look, I think, and I'm the one who stands up for Russ Martin, by the way, as you've seen in, horrible slander on the Blue Monday podcast about that poor guy. And I'm always the one that stands up for him. But we're getting close to the point now where you literally start to say, well, they're down. You know, I think it's like an 8-point gap at the moment, and they play Spurs, Liverpool in the EFL Cup as well. And okay, they got a Fulham, West Ham, Palace, Brentford after that. But they're not just losing to big teams at the moment, losing to everyone, aren't they? And conceding loads of goals as well. So you really do start getting to the point of, well, is this done? You know, a team playing that poorly going to mount the most miraculous comeback ever? Probably not. So I'd assume they're going to lose to Spurs, same as you. We're probably going to have both teams to score, aren't we? I will take... Oh, it does feel extreme, though. It doesn't feel like it could be just a standard 3-1 or something, does it? It does feel crazier than that. But I'll go for the standard 3-1, being you've taken the 4-2. So same margin of victory, fewer goals. Bournemouth versus West Ham. Julian Lopetegui came out in the good position in El Sakiko, didn't he? But it's another kind of Gary O'Neill derby, isn't it? For was Gary O'Neill at Bournemouth? He must have been, mustn't he?
Yeah, he was Bournemouth manager. Yeah.
Of course he was.
Did a good job.
Yeah. Deary me. Bournemouth versus West Ham. I think I've got to back Bournemouth, haven't I? I don't think West Ham are going to travel well. 2 Monday night games in a row. Does that offset their routine? I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much about that. Generally mess up on Bournemouth, so I'm going to back them 2-1. Bournemouth 2, West Ham 1.
Yeah, I'm going for Bournemouth 1, West Ham 1, which won't do a huge amount for Lopetegui. I think the only way that he can improve his relationship with the West Ham fans is to just win some games. That's the only thing he can do to buy himself some time. And although 1-1 draw at Bournemouth isn't a bad result, it's not going to do too much. It's not going to get him too much credit in the bank. But yeah, West Ham fans going to Bournemouth, and Bournemouth we must give credit to 2 wins in that double match week. For them, West Ham fans probably go there very envious of what Bournemouth have in some respects. They're a club that are a fraction of the size of West Ham. I think their stadium is about a fifth of the size. But Bournemouth have what West Ham want, and that's a really good progressive manager, a good attractive style of football, and they're competing up in the top half of the Premier League at the moment. That's what West Ham want, and it's what Bournemouth have at the moment.
Yeah, very, very much so. And what we have is another slate of predictions complete there for round 16. Get yours in the comments. Now, you may now not see Mikey for a few weeks, but we cannot confirm whether that's going to happen because there are extremely important things happening in Mikey's life. So he may be back next week, but I've actually got my fingers crossed that he won't be back next week for very, very positive reasons, of course. So we may be saying happy Christmas and see you in a few weeks, Mikey.
Yeah. I've got a young tractor boy on the way, Ben, which, that's going to take over my life for
18 years.
Yeah, 18 years. Yeah, there we go. So I'm not going to be able to dedicate as much time to staring at the Premier League results and injury lists and things like that. But yeah, happy Christmas to everyone if I'm not back next Tuesday.
So Mikey will be back when he's back. I'm sure all of you parents understand that we don't quite know what happens and how it happens and, what the result of that is
it's about as predictable as going, like trying to predict Brighton or Bournemouth.
Agreed. But do feel free, guys. I know we have a laugh and a joke in the comments and whatnot. I'm sure Mikey would love to see some well wishes down there in the comments as well. Mikey, good luck from me. And I hope I don't see you next week, because if we do, your mind is going to be extremely elsewhere, which might be good for me to actually win a round of predictions. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll see me and maybe someone else and maybe a new tractor boy next week.